Hello, my tree amigos. Dan from climbingarborist.com here for another episode of Coffee Break. So, in this episode of Coffee Break, I want to talk about working abroad as an arborist. So, to start with, traveling is so good for the soul, so good for life experience. Just understanding and experiencing different cultures. Even if you like myself, I haven't traveled and experienced tons of places, but I've certainly traveled a little bit. And when it comes to work, I've worked in the UK, which is where I grew up and trained. I've worked in Australia, and I now live and work in Canada. So not a ton of places, and I know there's so many arborists out there that I've worked in, like 10, 15 different countries. So I've not got, massive amounts of experience, but I've certainly have experienced a fair amount. And first off, traveling is just something that I feel if you have the opportunity, just kind of take it with both hands and run with it. And as an arborist, that is so easy to do. So, talking from personal experience, when I went traveling, when I first went to Australia, it's so easy to get a job. Like especially if you have some amount of experience as a tree climber, getting work is so easy. I arrived in Australia, called around a few different companies, and basically was offered a job on the phone there and then. It's that easy to get work as a tree climber. And the same happened in Canada. So as soon as I arrived, I kind of settled down for a couple of weeks, found somewhere to live, got my bearings around the city, and then straight away, as soon as I called, I worked a couple of days for a few different companies, kind of tested the water a bit, and then I got a job straight away. So when it comes to getting work as an arborist in a different country, it is super, super easy. And especially now, the way, you can connect over social media so easily, you could probably line up 5-6 different companies in the country that you're heading to before you even arrive. Like when I went to Australia, social media wasn't a huge thing. Obviously, it was around, but it wasn't a massive part of everyday life. There wasn't this whole arborist community. But now, over like Instagram or something, you could probably put a post out saying, I'm going to work in Australia in 4 months' time. Can anybody recommend anywhere? Has anybody got any work? This, that, and the other. And you'd probably be surprised how much you'd be, bombarded with comments and messages and that kind of stuff. So, finding work as a tree climber is so easy. So, if you have even the slightest desire to go traveling and experience the world, then go for it. So yeah, the people that I've met and that I've worked with, I know people that have worked, Sweden is a big one. I know a bunch of people that have worked in Sweden and had some fantastic experiences. It seems to be one of those places that once you kind of get in the tree climber community and you start meeting people through different companies and start meeting people at conferences and climbing competitions, Sweden keeps popping up time after time after time. Same with Norway. That's quite a good one for people going traveling and just doing like a year, getting some experience, just experiencing different country, different living. So I've met, I have friends who are from Australia, from New Zealand, from Canada, the US, UK, Ireland, France, Germany. And I've met all these people through, either going to different countries and working, or I've met working here in Canada, and so many different people from different places, all kind of doing that same thing, visiting different countries, seeing what they like, seeing if the lifestyle works for them. Because most tree climbers are definitely outdoorsy kind of people, so especially living where I do now in British Columbia in Canada, it's a very active outdoor kind of a place. skiing and snowboarding in the winter, hiking, mountain biking, all that kind of stuff in the summer. So, and there's a reason why tree climbers especially want to come over here to British Columbia and experience that outdoor lifestyle, because there's so much to do no matter what time of year it is. So getting a job, super easy. And even if you're not a skilled tree climber, even if you've just been doing some groundwork and you want to travel, same thing. Like it seems like every tree company nowadays is just crying out for employees, whether that be, climbers at the highest level or ground staff. There's always companies just screaming out for employees. So no matter what your skill level, I think it would be fairly easy to find a job. And for me, as in running a job website, if you go to Climbing Arborist jobs, you'll see a ton of jobs on there. The US, the UK, Canada, Australia, some in Europe like Sweden. There's a bunch of jobs on there, so super easy to find. And even if you don't use those job boards, those websites, I think if you just call up, it's really easy. So another thing is just meeting people. And I think when you travel and when you meet people and when you start doing competitions in new countries, and it's a way of really getting to know people that you work with, and the community. So here in Vancouver, we're part of the Pacific Northwest chapter of the ISA. So the competitions that we do are all in the Pacific Northwest. So that's like Seattle, Oregon, which is Portland, obviously all of BC, different parts of Washington State, Oregon State. So there's so many different climbers and just tree workers in general from all over those different states in the Pacific Northwest. You get to meet some absolutely fantastic people, and I've met so many people in this region, and even then people come from other chapters and come to the tree climbing competitions. If they're in that place at that time, they just come and see, or maybe even they come and compete, or they come and volunteer. And so you start meeting people from all over the world, all over that same continent, and then you'll probably see those people again at conferences, trade shows, and you start sharing ideas, talking about people's experiences, and just broadening your horizons as an arborist. Another thing about travel is, so I remember when I went to Australia, I got there, and when I first started working, I just didn't know any of the trees. I didn't know any of the properties of the trees. I mean, I knew what eucalyptus trees were, and I could identify them as far as saying, that's eucalyptus. I couldn't identify each different species of eucalyptus, but there was other trees that I just had no idea what they were. And obviously, after a few months, I started learning a little bit about them. But it's so strange when you go from a country where you've lived and worked, and you know the species and you can identify the different trees, and then going to somewhere and it's like you're starting from scratch. It's crazy to me. Obviously in Canada it's very similar, a lot of similar species to the UK because of the climate, that kind of stuff. But yeah, when going to Australia, I remember a couple of different trees. There's like Banksia that I had no idea that tree existed. I can't even remember now. It's been so long since I worked there. But yeah, and climbing palm trees. Obviously in Australia, that's a common thing, but I'd never climbed a palm tree in my life. So that was an experience. So you get all these different experiences. I remember on my last day at work in Australia, I was climbing a tree, and then I got down from the tree, and there was like a spider on, and I asked one of the guys, I was like, "What's that spider?" And he was like, "Oh, that's a white tip." And found out that was pretty dangerous, but I had no idea. I was always petrified of seeing snakes in trees, but luckily I never did. Um, yeah, so you just get all these different experiences, and it just helps round you as an arborist, and you understand then, you know. And so working in different countries as well. I come from the UK, where the roads are small and narrow. The houses are tightly packed together, especially if you're working in a town or a city where there's a lot of like terraced houses, which means, you know, all the houses are kind of built in one row. There's no gap between each house, so they all have hardly any front garden. So the work is normally always in the back garden. A lot of time, you know, tiny little back gardens, and you might get a tree spanning over like 5 different gardens, and uh, that is a real challenge, because a lot of the time you've got loads of fences, greenhouses that are all tightly packed in these different gardens, and you've got one tree and you're pruning it over all these different obstacles that can't be moved. Then you've got to get the debris from the backyard to the front, and that might be through like a tiny little alleyway, or even through the house a lot of the time in the UK. Which, so because of the narrow streets, and you know, the kind of lack of space in the UK. This is if you're in a town or a city. Most companies, the most common thing will be to have like small chippers, so like 6-inch, 8-inch chippers. Whereas going to Australia, there's so much more space. Everybody's got much more land. Like each property is much bigger. Usually, they're all detached, so you know the house is completely separated from any other buildings. Even if each property is, you know, quite small and close together, the houses are separate. Usually there's like back lane access, so you can get like big trucks, big chippers. You can get cranes to most trees, and in Australia cranes were way more commonly used than in the UK, because in the UK streets are narrow. You're always having to go over the tops of houses. It kind of just doesn't make sense. In Australia, you know, using boom trucks, because you can get to a lot of trees very easily. And the same in Canada. So Canada, a lot of the bigger companies have, you know, big trucks, big boom trucks, crane trucks. Like 12-inch chipper is pretty much standard. Then the bigger companies will have like 15, 18-inch chippers. And even now, to me, that's crazy, because I'm still of the mentality of, you know, an arborist from the UK, where a lot of companies use like 6-inch chippers. And, you know, for running my business, I use a small 6-inch chipper. And it's just, I like running a small company. I have no real aspirations of being big company with massive equipment. You know, some people do. That's not for me. I don't really want to ever buy a boom truck, because I like the act and the process of tree climbing. I like being a tree climber. I don't want to rely on using a boom truck. I've used boom trucks in the past, different companies that I've worked for, which is also another great thing about traveling. You get to experience different companies that have this different equipment. So I've got to use boom trucks and 18-inch chippers with winches, and I've worked with companies that have like, you know, bobcats and all this heavy duty equipment, which has been fantastic experience. I've done a bit of crane work, and a fair bit of that was in my short time in Australia. I did a fair bit of crane work. I did some crane work in the UK, but that was very sporadic. And I've done some crane work here in Canada, which, yeah, that's probably I've done as much as I did in the UK. Australia, it was much more common. Have a few friends that have done work in New Zealand, and New Zealand, just from the arborists I know over there, it seems to be the place that they use helicopters for tree removal now and again, probably just because of the terrain. So if you're a climber and you want to go to New Zealand, there's a chance that you may end up on a removal using a helicopter, which would be my absolute dream. That's probably one thing that that I haven't done that I would absolutely love to do. So, and then just working with different people, different arborists. Like when I was in the UK, worked for a very small company. Nobody was into competitions. Nobody really was an arborist any more than just for a job. It wasn't like a lifestyle. And I feel now, with the people that I've surrounded myself with the community that I've become part of through competitions, I feel like it's way more of a lifestyle now than just a job. So it's just, yeah, it's incredible how meeting and working with the right kind of people can kind of almost like guide your path in a certain direction. Like when I started working here in Canada, and I met some awesome guys. I met Tiger and Matt Beatty, Joel, Matt Fernandez, George Amos, George Keys. Like all of these people I met through companies that I worked at, and that kind of like changed my path and changed how I enjoyed my job working with these people, and the people that I met through the competitions. Like there's so many people to name. I can't name everybody, but the people in the Pacific Northwest to do the competitions, like Katie Bigelow and Damien Carey, and it's just been absolutely incredible to create this lifestyle and this career that I absolutely love. So to wrap this up, I absolutely, if you have any inkling to go traveling whatsoever and you're an arborist, then don't hesitate. Especially if you're younger, if you're 18 to 35, you can quite easily get visas, working holiday visas, 1-2 year visas for these different places, like especially Australia, New Zealand, Canada. Not sure how easy it is for the US, Europe. Just do it. If there's nothing holding you back, and it's maybe just the kind of little bit of fear about going off and it's a bit of the unknown. If that's the only thing that's holding you back, then don't worry about it and just do it. You'll absolutely love it. So thank you very much for watching and for listening to me ramble on as usual. I hope this will inspire some of you to head out there and discover what the world has to offer. So thanks again for watching. Much appreciated.